Hello and good evening. I'm Laura Goldman, the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and it is my pleasure to have you join me this evening for tonight's topic and this week's topic on food noise explained and how the proper nutrition can help quiet constant thoughts about food. And of course, we are also talking about food noise in general and how that's related with GLP-1 medications. And remember, when we're talking about managing food noise or general nutrition, it is always the quality of your calories that matters. And you will see this evident through the presentation tonight as well. So what we'll be covering, of course, is what food noise is and what that means. I'm sure you've heard the phrase plenty of times by now. How GLP-1 medications can change that experience, and how the food choices and the choices you make for your nutrition can further help. I do offer one challenge of the week and leave time for any questions that you may have. First and foremost, I think it's important that we address what in the world we mean by the term food noise. And there's a little bit of bad news here because there is no standardized definition for it yet. But it's described in multiple ways, but it tends to follow sort of a similar track. So, of course, it's persistent and generally unwanted thoughts about food. Frequently, we associate this with cravings, but there are some people who also attribute the term to constant thoughts about what they should eat, when they should eat, and how much of any food they should eat. And this perseveration on food and food choices, whether or not it's considered healthy choices or not so healthy choices, can be mentally exhausting, understandably so. And this is a real experience. So even though there's no standardized definition, the experience is real and certainly described in multiple ways and by multiple people. And the discussion of it, while the initial term had been searched for in the very early 2000s, the discussion of it is increasing most likely because the GLP-1 medications have been very strongly helping people quiet this noise. And so I think because larger numbers of people are feeling this relief or this unburdening of the thoughts about food happening when they're taking these medications, it has been brought forth in the conversation. So since we're talking about that food noise, and since that involves thoughts about food, we want to talk about hunger and how it's reflected in your brain. So there are two main pathways that drive our choice to eat or that make us feel hungry. The first one is called the homeostatic pathway, and this is all about preserving energy in our body and helping our body function. So it tells us when we are fed, but also the homeostatic pathway implores us to eat when we need calories or nutrients to function effectively. However, there is another pathway that tends to be stronger and louder, which is the hedonic or reward pathway. And this is where we have that food-seeking behavior, and oftentimes, like I mentioned, can override the homeostatic pathway. That's when we have those moments of, I know I'm fed, or I know I'm not really hungry, but this looks very good. Or when we are feeling like we just want to eat something because we don't have anything else to do. This is also when we look at cravings, specifically when you're craving a food and you're saying, I'm being so bad, but we go for it. That's through the hedonic pathway. So thankfully, for many people, the GLP-1 medications seem to help work on both pathways. We know that it does help increase feelings of satiety and slow gastric emptying. So these are real physical functions that can help with the homeostatic pathway. But also it can help dampen the activity in our brain related to those thoughts and cravings about food. And so people are talking about having a quieter brain. Of course, it should be mentioned that GLP-1 medications don't always erase this food noise, and some people might not experience it very much at all. And so developing proper habits, regardless of how it's affecting you in this area, can very much help support those goals. When it comes to nutrition choices and impacting food noise, it really is going back to the basics, because if we can have the proper foods that can help us feel fuller longer, then that feeling of fullness, well, it can't completely eliminate the food noise thoughts. It can help quiet that down. So the basics are, as we know, protein at every meal, because we know that that is the most satiating macronutrient. So try to get it throughout the day versus one large bolus of protein at one meal. And when you do have carbs, because they are still important, try and aim for those fiber-rich carbohydrates, because that can help slow digestion and also still support fullness. Beans are a great example of being a fiber-rich carb as well as a protein. So that's a perfect food to add to your meals. Leafy greens can help fill you up. Whole grains and berries, those are also very fiber-rich carbohydrates. One that some people, I think, neglect is the focus on consistent meal timing, because irregularity with meal times tend to be associated with larger blood sugar fluctuations, and then can also potentially lead to more cravings later in the day. If you've been skipping meals throughout the day, you may end up overeating at night or choosing the easy but most likely less healthy options just because at this point you're starving and want to get something in. And finally, balanced meals. So if we're looking at the protein and the fiber-rich carbs and we're eating that consistently throughout the day, getting a balanced plate should be coming very naturally. But that does help maintain that post-meal satiety more than, say, a carb-heavy and low-protein plate. And a good example of that would be plain pasta with very little sauce, maybe next to no protein. And we know that it's very easy to fill up on that, or maybe a deep dish pizza. And that is not going to be quite so balanced and can lead to perhaps more hunger or cravings later on. So when we're talking about combining the nutrition and our medication, because they can work together and support each other, do remember that GLP-1 medications are not a replacement for proper nutrition. The way I like to talk about them is they are the easy button to make healthier choices. Of course, if food noise feels louder, so if you're having dose changes, if there's extra stress in your life, if you're traveling so that there's irregular dosing given, it is also important to lean into the nutrition side of things and looking at those basics of protein, avoiding meal skipping, and getting those balanced plates, because even though, again, it won't fully quiet that noise, it can make you have that feeling of control over your choices. And we're already at the challenge of the week. So something to look into, if you don't want to necessarily document every food you're eating, consider about documenting the consistency of the food you're eating. So for 3 to 5 days this next week, try to keep your meals, so time them where they're eaten around the same time every day, within an hour or so. I don't expect perfect 8, noon, 5, etc., but within an hour of the established time for 3 to 5 days, and try to keep notes for yourself on whether or not you're feeling stronger or quieter food noise on those particular days. And hopefully you'll notice that it is doing better for you. So to put all this together, just know that food noise is a real phenomenon that many people can experience. And while GLP-1s can help quiet the food noise in your mind, it is only part of the equation. So remember that those healthy nutrition choices that we hammer on about frequently can help work with your medication to further quiet that unnecessary chatter going on in your brain. And with that, I welcome any questions you may have about this or any other nutrition related topic. All right. Well, I hope you found this helpful and informative and inspire you to continue your next week with increased focus on some proper nutrition goals. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.